This is an explanation for example 1b on page 298 of the Algebra 1 book. This is Unit 9, Lesson 5. I have written on the screen the problem from example 1b. We want to actually find the least common denominator of these fractions so that we can rewrite this equation without having fractions. It's much easier to solve that way. So what we want to do is find the least common denominator. Now this is something that you've done ever since you started fractions, really. It sometimes looks a little bit more confusing when you add in those variables. So let's first do an example without variables. Let's say you had 1/2 plus 3/4. Okay? As you know, with fractions, you need to have a common denominator in order to add these two. So to find a common denominator, we look for what is the least common denominator. What number could they both be multiplied into? So in this case, there's more than one. We could say 8, we could say 12, we could say 20, but we want to find the smallest one. In this case, it's actually going to be 4, right? This 4 times 1 would be 4, so 4 can be multiplied into itself. 2 times 2 would be 4, okay? So they can both be multiplied to make 4. So in this one, we don't actually have to change it because it already has a denominator of 4. In this one, we're going to multiply top and bottom by 2 in order to get that 4 on the bottom. Remember, whatever you do to the denominator, you have to do the same thing to the numerator. So you end up with 2/4, which is an equivalent fraction. Okay, 1/2 and 2/4, I'm sure you recognize that as equivalent fractions. Now we have common denominators. Okay, what we're doing in this problem is similar to that. Okay, it's not exactly the same, but it's similar. We're going to actually multiply each side by the least common denominator. Okay, in the example I just gave you, we were multiplying top and bottom of the fraction. In this one, we're going to multiply each side by the least common denominator. It makes a slight difference because we don't want to end up with another fraction. We want to get rid of that or cancel out that fraction. But it's the same idea. We're looking for what is the least common denominator of all of the denominators. In this case, we have 5, we have 2, and we have 20. The best place to start is look at your biggest denominator and ask yourself, can the other two denominators be multiplied into that number? So in other words, we have 20 as the biggest. Could 2 be multiplied into 20? Yes. Could 5 be multiplied into 20? Yes. So 20 is our least common denominator. Now, here's where the slight difference comes. We're not going to multiply each fraction by whatever number that makes them 20. So like this one, we would multiply top and bottom by 10 to make the denominator 20. This one, we would multiply top and bottom by 4 to make the denominator 20. We don't want to do that. We want to get rid of the denominators. So that's when we take the least common denominator, which we've already decided is 20. We're going to multiply each side by 20. Okay? I'm going to start with the right side first because it's the easiest. 1/20 times 20, and if you need to think about it, remember 20 to make it a fraction would go over 1. When you do that, the 20s are actually going to cancel each other out. You just get 1, which is much nicer than 1/20. On the left side here, remember we need to distribute that 20. So we're going to multiply each fraction by that 20. So when I multiply the first one, 20 times 3a over 5, I'm going to go to the side here. Okay, the 20 and the 5 you can reduce. 5 is going to, divide both by 5. 5 will be 1, 20 will be 4. So 4 times 3a is going to give you 12a. Then when I do 20 times a over 2, again, the 20 and the 2 will reduce. Divide both by 2. 2 divided by 2 will be 1. 20 divided by 2 will be 10. Now multiply across. 10 times a will be 10a. Now this is a much easier problem to solve when you have gotten rid of the fractions. So just remember to find that common denominator and then multiply both sides by that number.